Hey all, and welcome to this now fifth part of this video tutorial series on how to edit audiobooks the Deyan audio style. Now that we've got everything cut up, our settings are all good to go, we can start actually getting into this audio. We've got the MDC audio loaded in, the high-passed audio is there if we need it. We've got the script up here in a PDF software. This is just Preview that comes with Mac, but you're going to want to open it in something that can also annotate PDFs. Preview for Mac does. So if you got a Mac, this is the go-to tool. Although you could use whatever you want, as long as it opens and can annotate PDFs, which we'll get into later. I've got my timing specs up for this fictional client, Storybooks Inc., so we know what we're going to edit. And let's just take a look at rules of thumb real quick. This is just if you're brand new to audiobooks and really don't know what to guess if you're adjusting time, the commas generally 0.15 seconds to 0.5 seconds, periods 0.5 seconds to 0.85 seconds, and paragraphs 1 second to 1.5. 1.5 second paragraph is kind of limited just to time travel, flashback, new setting completely, things like that. Otherwise 1 to 125, 1.25 is usually the amount we go for paragraphs. And these are rules of thumb as it says, so sometimes this goes out of bounds and sometimes things need extra drama and you'd break it for that. Or if a narrator's slower or faster than your average narrator, then their times might edge on one side or the other of these, and maybe even cross over. If they're very quick, I could see using 0.10 commas sometimes, or if they're very slow, using 0.9 second or 0.95 second or even 1 second pauses for periods. And it just depends on both the tempo of that reader and what the scene demands. But generally you can't go too wrong trying to go for something in this area. When people first start out, oftentimes they hem and haw. Oh, should I use a 50 or a 65? The thing is, when you first start this out, the way that you're going to know whether your editor's right is by just trying something. Don't spend too much time thinking about it. Just guess, and then, your edit, when you audition it, it will tell you if it's done a good job or not, right? So as you'll see, I'm going to be using my Option Q and Option W shortcuts to zoom in and out, especially when we're doing things like this, where I want to clip off like the beginning right here. I'm hitting Option W right here, hit B, select this, hit X, and then Q to center our screen. We know that we want everything to start with a 50, so we're going to do that first off. And the first thing we have is our introduction. So I'm going to make a marker for that. Now notice I'm not making any zoom settings. Don't do that. That will annoy people if this is on. So just make it a marker. We've got our script over here. We've got time code at the top, which is more, that'll change as we edit though. So this is more if we need to go back and find a sentence or a word or something for some reason. We have a reference here. Mostly what we're looking at as editors are these take marks here. If it was a roll edit, that would mean there were extra takes there located at that take mark that we'd have to remove. This is just a take edit that we're doing. It was, or a punch edit. It was recorded punch style, so if the actor made an error, the director actually went back and recorded over it. So these little hash marks here just tell us where the new takes are, and so or where the punch is, and so we might just have to clean up a punch there. And in fact, it's part of the editor's duties to make sure all of these places are clean. So that's definitely something you don't want to do, is turn in an edit where a bunch of these are not edited. That would tell us right away you're not paying attention to the script. Make sure you have an annotated script if we have one. If it's a home narrated, it might not have one, but otherwise there should definitely be an annotated script like this, and this will be really helpful. Sometimes they put in things like T for timing or N for noise, all things to look out for. Sometimes the director might even specify specific timing for some kind of dramatic pause or something like that. Go ahead and try that out. It'll probably work really well since they're paying attention to the story and whatnot. I'd take their suggestions on that. So we started out with a 50 right here. We're going to follow along.
Introduction.
Right away, a bunch of noise and unacceptable breaths. So this is the main type of edit that we do. Normally there are two kinds, usually either eliminating a pause and replacing it with clean room tone, or just clearing a noise like that. In this case, this whole pause is just terrible. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it like that. Notice we're zoomed really high up, so it looks like I'm going to cut off important stuff here, but this is all just noise and stuff. For something to be proper signal, it usually has to hit the ceiling in this zoom setting. So I'm going to clear that. We want to do 2 50s after the introduction, because that's our chapter announcement. And I know I've cut into this a little, so I'm going to put a little fade there.
Introduction.
Cool. All right. And then we'll keep going here.
Folklore,
All right, now I'm going to start listening at high speed right now. I've only got it at 125. In actuality, I'd probably listen to this at 170 or so to get it done in a reasonable amount of time. But we're going to go slow because we're all learning together here. So I'm going to hit the control space macro that we've been studying, and we're going to go at high speed and listen out for stuff we don't like. And if we hear something, stop and hit the space key and Q key, and it'll take us there. So.
Folklore, legends, myths, and fairy tales have followed childhood through the ages.
Right, so right away we have a take mark, and boy, it's a take mark, right? So he pauses a long time here. So this is how we're taking care of this. We're highlighting it. I'm hitting X with my index finger here, and while I'm hitting X, I'm going over here for an appropriate amount of room tone. I'm thinking 35. As I'm dragging that in, I'm putting my thumb over the space bar so that I can hit the space bar.
For every healthy youngster.
Right, so real quickly, that's highlight, clear, drag, and play.
Through the ages.
And you shouldn't have to look at your hands to do any of that, and each hand should be getting ready for the next thing before it's actually needed. So as you're highlighting, you need to have your finger above the X key, and then as you're dragging, you need to have your thumb above the space key so that you can hit them all pretty quickly, you know? So that should look something like this.
Through the ages. For every healthy...
Right, and back up to high speed.
For every healthy youngster has a wholesome and instinctive love for stories fantastic, marvelous, and manifestly unreal.
There's lots of noise there too, and especially at the beginning of a chapter or beginning of a book, I'm going to be a little more meticulous. So it seems like I might be editing every little thing for a while here, but like I said in audiobooks, it's not that meticulous. As soon as we get into a bit of a roll here, it won't need so much editing.
Unreal. The winged fairies of Grimm and Andersen have brought more happiness to childish hearts than all other human creations.
Right, and so at the paragraphs, we almost just always edit. And in this particular case, it's rushed, it looks like. And oftentimes it's just where narrators kind of take a beat to figure out what's going on. And so, you know, unless it sounds perfectly clean, and this does not even look perfectly clean, we're going to edit the paragraphs. So clear that, put that in there.
Creations. Yet the old-time fairy tale.
Stop there.
Fairy tale.
Having served for generations, may now be classed as historical in the children's library. For the time has come for a series of...
Yeah, that has a little bit of noise in it. Yeah, we could get rid of that. Hitting Option W to get back to our zoom setting.
Come for a series...
There we go.
For a series of newer wonder tales.
Wonder tales.
So there's a bit of noise there. Just wanna... Yeah, I'm probably going to have to do a careful edit here, where I'm highlighting, you know, between axes so that it'll keep the same shape.
Wonder tales.
Of course, Option W to get back to our zoom setting. Pretty nifty there.
Wonder tales, in which the stereotype
genie, dwarf, and fairy are eliminated, together with all the horrible and blood-curdling incidents devised by their authors to point a fearsome moral to each tale.
Right, that's not needed. That's a bunch of mouth noise.
To each tale. Modern education.
Cool.
Modern education includes morality. Therefore, the modern child seeks only entertainment in its wonder tales, and gladly dispenses with all disagreeable incidents.
Paragraph and a take, so we know we're going to edit, so I don't even wait.
Incident.
Having this thought in mind, the story of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz was written solely to please children of today. It aspires...
Right, that's got a little bit of a noise in it. Let's get rid of that.
Children of today.
It aspires to being a modernized fairy tale in which the wonderment and joy are retained and the heartaches and nightmares are left out. L. Frank.
Right, and that needs a little bit of space there.
Left out. L.
Frankbaum, Chicago.
Yeah.
Frankbaum, Chicago, April 1900.
That's all fine.
1900. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
All right, cool.
1900. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Now what we have here is an end of a chapter, so we need to look over here at our specs. We've got 350 for the end of a chapter, so we're going to highlight that, clear it, put a 350 in there.
Oz.
Make sure that sounds fine. I'm going to hit our Option Q key, because that'll zoom us out and give us a more normal waveform. And check this out, and we have actually the marker up there. So all I really need to do is hit Shift and highlight that. But I want to do this in the zoomed out view so I can take a look at it. Hit Option W or hit W to look at the right side. Hit Q to look at the left side. You can zoom in and out. And one of the things I'm doing here is I'm making sure that right here it doesn't say Chapter 1. or chapter 2 over here. You know, I'm making sure to that I haven't skipped the clip grouping on any chapters, and it looks like I haven't. I've just got the introduction here, so I'm going to hit Option Command G, and I'm going to name this. We're going to go with 01, because the only things that get labeled 0 would be like intro and outro credits or disc slates, things that don't actually appear in the book. Anything that actually appears in the book, even if it's not chapter 1, whatever that first thing is, in this case an introduction, it's going to get file number 01. So that's what we're going to call our clip group. So that's Wizard of Oz, introduction, and EM for edit master with underscores in between all of those. So that's our first chapter, basically. Now we can go over here, Option W to get back to our zoom setting, throw a 50 on top again. We're going to make this chapter 1. We don't have to put the cyclone. As long as there's a chapter number, we'll just go by chapter numbers, right?
1.
Again, get rid of that because there's some noise. Always 1 second. For all clients, it'll be exactly 1 second that goes between here.
1. The cyclone.
Right, and so this is where we want our 250, though. Is after this whole thing is called the chapter announcement. Right.
Cyclone.
There we go.
Dorothy
lived in the midst of the great Kansas prairies with Uncle
The great Kansas prairies with Uncle Henry.
That's fun.
with Uncle Henry, who was a farmer, and Aunt Em, who was the farmer's wife. Their house.
Okay, so that's basically, you know, your basics. You're highlighting bad pauses, clearing them, and throwing in clean room tone, and then just hitting play. Avoid doing things like sometimes I see people throw in room tone, and then their instinct, because of the way they used to work, is to click before the room tone
Who was the
so they can hear it. Really, really try to ignore this as you practice, because that'll put an extra step in there in your muscle memory you don't want to do. The muscle memory you're looking to build, the wax on, wax off of this is, to quote Karate Kid, is you're highlighting, clearing, dragging, and playing.
Farmer's wife.
If you're doing any more than those 4 things, notice the edit itself only takes 3 user inputs, and the last one is to play. If you're doing any more than 4 things, then you're doing too much
Farmer's
work.
wife.
And there's definitely, you know, different ways to do this. It's Pro Tools, so there's always a million different ways. But that's definitely something you want to make sure you're doing, is just doing those 4 user inputs and practicing them, and practice getting fast at them, because you want to be able to do that pretty much instantaneously. I'm kind of doing it a little slower than I would normally, but I think, yeah, if you haven't seen it before, it probably looks pretty quick, and you can get what I'm talking about. So that's the muscle memory you want to build up. You know, that along with the rules of thumb, along with knowing to edit out little noises by zooming in, and if need be, highlighting a piece of audio so that the remaining audio will be contiguous, and clearing it out. Those are your basic go-tos. We're going to be looking at some macros and some other things we can do in the next videos. Thanks.